This happened just last month. I am Jamie, a 32-year-old experimental physicist. I had just returned from a research project at CERN in Switzerland, where I worked on quantum mechanics. It was intense and exciting. I was glad to be back in my lively university town. The streets were filled with people and laughter. Everything felt normal. The first night back, I settled into my apartment. Milo, my cat, was staring at an empty corner of the room. He flicked his tail. His pupils were wide. I chuckled, thinking he was just being a cat. I turned off the lights, crawled under the covers, and closed my eyes. Then I heard odd noises. Soft, unidentifiable sounds drifted through the silence like whispers in the dark. I felt a chill run through me, but tried to shake it off. I told myself it was just the house settling. Over the next few days, things started getting weird. My computer kept crashing and my lab equipment malfunctioned. I brushed it off as bad luck. But then I found notes scattered in my handwriting that I couldn't remember writing. They had equations I didn't recall working on. My heart raced as a cold shiver shot through my spine. Shadows flickered in my peripheral vision. I would turn to look, but nothing was there. It was unsettling. I chatted with my colleagues at the university. They seemed odd, too. One of them, Sarah, hesitated when I mentioned my time at CERN. "Did you feel anything different?" she asked. I thought she was joking. "It's just science," I said, but her face turned pale. "Just be careful," she said softly. Another colleague, Tom, wouldn't even make eye contact. There was a tension in the air. It felt like something was hanging over us, something I couldn't grasp. I started to think about that feeling. Was it possible something had followed me home? My apartment felt heavier. Every night, I would lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Milo would sit up, fixated on that same empty corner. I didn't know what to do. I tried to ignore it, but every creak and every rustle made my heart race. Then one night, it got worse. I was brushing my teeth when I heard a voice. Clear as day, it whispered my name. Jamie. I froze, toothbrush halfway to my mouth. I turned, and the empty corner was darker than before. My breath hitched. I asked, "Who's there?" My voice trembled. I did not expect an answer, but something stirred in the shadows. I approached the corner slowly, heart pounding. Then I noticed a shape moving just out of reach of the light. It felt wrong. I saw a flash of something, or someone. When I flipped the light on, nothing was there. I stood frozen in place. That wasn't the worst of it. As I turned to leave, I felt a cold breath against my neck. I gasped and spun around, but only darkness greeted me. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I stumbled back into the living room, mind racing. Milo was hissing and staring defensively at the now menacing corner. The pen I'd used to write the notes lay on the table, ink spilling out like a wound. I didn't want to admit it, but I knew. Something had followed me home from CERN. I still don't know what happened. The next morning, I didn't sleep well. Nightmares invaded my mind, filled with shadows and echoes of my name. I woke up feeling exhausted and unsettled. I dragged myself out of bed and decided to head to the university. I needed a distraction, something to ground me. Before I left, I glanced at Milo. He was still staring intently at that corner as if he could see something I couldn't. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was all in my imagination. At the lab, I found Sarah pacing in the hallway. She looked frantic. When she saw me, her expression shifted to relief. "Jamie, I'm glad you're here," she said. "I wanted to talk to you." We went into my office, and I closed the door behind us. "What's going on?" I asked, hoping for some normal conversation. "I've been doing some digging," she said, her voice low. "Do you remember the experiments we were running on quantum entanglement?" I nodded. "After you left, weird things started happening in the lab. Equipment malfunctioning. Unexplained energy fluctuations. It's as if we tapped into something." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "You think it's connected to what I experienced?" She hesitated. "There's this theory. Some scientists believe that when you manipulate certain quantum states, you can open portals or create rifts. Things can cross over." "Cross over?" I repeated, my mind racing. You mean something could have come through? She nodded slowly, eyes wide with concern. I think that's possible. You need to be careful, Jamie. If something crossed over. But before she could finish, a strange noise echoed through the hall. It sounded like a low growl, reverberating off the walls. My heart sank as I looked toward the door. What was that? I whispered, dread creeping in. Probably just the air system, Sarah stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. We both listened as the growl grew louder, almost as if it were moving closer. Then, it hit me. The equipment malfunctions. The notes I had found. What if this had followed me not just to my home, but to my work too? I had to find out more. That's when I remembered something, I said suddenly. On my last day at CERN, I overheard a conversation about a containment breach during an experiment. No one wanted to talk about it. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. We need to investigate. If there's something here, we have to know what we're dealing with. Just then, the lights flickered, and everything went dark. My stomach dropped. I could hear breathing, heavy and labored, coming from somewhere in the room. Jamie? Sarah whispered, panicked. I felt the air grow colder. Sarah, I said, my voice trembling. I think we're not alone. The darkness pressed in around us, thick and oppressive. My heart raced, and each breath felt like a challenge. I reached out for the desk to steady myself, the familiar contours of my office suddenly foreign in this shadowy void. What do we do? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Sarah replied, her voice shaking. Can we try to find the backup generator? Just as I nodded, there was another low growl, closer this time, punctuating the silence. It was followed by a rustling sound, as if something was moving just outside our door. I froze, fear flooding my system. Stay quiet, I urged, hoping to contain the dawning panic. We both listened intently. The growling gave way to what sounded like nails scraping against metal. I couldn't tell if it was right outside the door, or even in the room with us. Time dragged on, and every second felt like a small eternity. I flicked my phone's flashlight on, and the weak beam cut through the darkness. Here, I said, shining the light toward the door. We'll have to check it. But the growl came again, much louder. It felt like it was tearing through the silence. I swallowed hard. What is that? My voice trembled. I needed to know. Let's not open the door, Sarah insisted, backing away. We should find another way. I didn't want to think about what might be lurking out there. You think we can just escape while it's right outside? But the alternative felt riskier. Let's try the window, Sarah suggested, and I felt my hope flicker. If we can get to the stairwell, we can get help. We moved toward the window, both careful to stay silent. I pulled it open, but the hum of the building was replaced with a strange crackling sound from below. The ground looked far too distant from where we stood, definitely too far to jump. This won't work, I said, my panic rising. Just then, the lights flickered back on. A brief glimmer revealed a shape outside the door, something crouching, its eyes glinting in the light. I gasped, backing away instinctively. It's there, I shouted. Okay, we need to... Sarah began, but before she could finish, the door splintered with a loud crash. My instincts kicked in. I pushed Sarah back toward my desk, putting myself between her and the door. The moment the door gave way, I expected chaos. But instead there was only silence, broken by a heavy thump as something large fell to the ground. I dared a glance back. What was that? I asked. Then the shape emerged, towering and obscured by shadows, but with those same glinting eyes piercing through. I couldn't breathe. Fear gripped my throat. Just when I thought I could make out its features, it lunged. My mind screamed, and instinct drove me to grab my phone, the only thing I had to defend us. But darkness swallowed the room once again, and I realized we were running out of time. Sarah, we need to go. Now, I urged as I felt helpless in the face of whatever that was. We could either face what emerged from the dark, or we could find a way to escape this nightmare. The new threat loomed larger than any fear I'd ever faced, and as the growl crescendoed into a roar, it became clear the question wasn't if we'd make it out. It was if we could survive what lingered in the shadows. I could barely think as the creature lunged toward us. In that dizzying moment, adrenaline shot through me, pulling me into survival mode. I shoved the desk aside, desperate for a way out. "This way," I shouted, grabbing Sarah's hand as I dragged her toward the window. "Wait." She hesitated, her eyes darting back to the door. "What if it comes through?" "We can't stay here," I insisted, casting a quick glance at the shadows. The growl was still echoing, making my skin crawl. I pushed the window further open and looked down again. The ground was still too far to jump, but we had no other choice. Before I could think too much about it, I hooked my arms around the window frame and swung one leg over, then the other. I looked back at Sarah, who stood frozen, panic etched across her face. "Jump," I urged. With a shaky breath, she nodded, and to my surprise, climbed out beside me. We perched on the narrow ledge, and I felt the chill of metal against my skin. Just as Sarah stepped out, a splintering noise erupted behind us, followed by a low growl that reverberated in my bones. "Come on," I whispered urgently, urging her to move. We took a precarious leap down. I landed awkwardly on the ground and turned just in time to see Sarah tumble after me, landing hard but managing to roll and spring back up. We were outside now, in the remnants of what had once been a lively office building, but the darkness felt like an entity of its own. The glow of streetlights barely pierced through the murky ambiance. We sprinted toward the back entrance, those glinting eyes haunting my thoughts. "We need to find the side door," I said, hoping to distract us from whatever might be lurking nearby. As we reached the entrance, I fumbled for the handle. Locked. Of course. How could it be anything else? I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting the creature to explode from the shadows. "We'll have to go around." Sarah was breathing hard, panic and determination mixing in her voice. I nodded, heading toward the far end of the building. Just as we rounded the corner, a blood-curdling howl pierced the air. It echoed down the alley and my stomach twisted. I felt Sarah's grip on my arm tighten. "What was that?" she whispered, fear thick in the air. "I don't know," I said, trying to think clearly despite the rising terror. As we ducked behind a dumpster getting our bearings, I noticed a flicker of light up the street. "What if we head over there? Maybe it's a safe place," Sarah suggested, glancing back at the darkened entrance we had just fled. We moved quickly, bolting toward the light. Each step felt like we were breaking some kind of unspoken rule by leaving the dark behind. But then the howl came again, loud and piercing, sending shivers down my spine. It was closer this time. "Run!" I shouted. We sprinted, the light growing larger as we drew nearer. But my heart sank when I realized the source of it was a group of people standing outside a cafe. They seemed oblivious to the danger lurking in the shadows. "Please let us in," I yelled as we approached, bearing the weight of fear that clawed at my back. But then I froze, the crowd parting as I caught a glimpse of the thing, the very same creature, creeping behind us. It had followed us. My pulse thundered in my ears as I realized we might not be safe at all. Would the people see it? What would they do? The howl echoed again, and I clutched Sarah tighter, the panic consuming me. Then I heard a voice rise above the crowd. "What's going on?" One of the bystanders finally turned toward us, and I knew I had to act fast. "Get inside!" I screamed, praying for their attention. But in that moment as I looked back, the thing stepped out from the darkness, and everything I thought I knew shattered into chaos. The creature's silhouette loomed larger as it padded forward. My breath hitched, and I could see fear mirrored in Sarah's wide eyes. The crowd finally noticed, but the disbelief in their expressions froze me in place. "What is that?" someone shouted. Panic rippled through the onlookers. They stumbled back, creating a barrier between us and the creature that stalked us from behind. "Get inside!" I barked again, but the cafe patrons were too busy pointing and shouting. I felt a surge of frustration. No one seemed to comprehend what was coming for them. Then it happened. In one swift motion, the creature lunged forward, sending people tumbling backward in a scramble. "Move!" I yanked on Sarah's arm, pulling her in the opposite direction of the chaos. Fear fueled our flight as we passed through the throng of startled bodies. The piercing howl grew louder, chaotic panic breaking out around us. Tables were overturned, chairs scattered. I nearly lost my footing, but Sarah's grip held me steady. I cast a glance back. People were yelling, some were crying, but most were frozen in shock as the creature burst through the cafe shutters, its mouth wide in a sickening snarl. "What do we do?" Sarah gasped, her breath coming in frantic bursts. The alley stretched before us, dark and uninviting. My mind raced for an answer, but nothing felt right. "There has to be a way out," I shouted, scanning the surroundings. A flicker of hope caught my eye, a narrow side street just beyond the cafe. "Over there," I pointed, my voice loud over the din. We darted toward the opening, the creature's growl echoing behind us. I could sense its power, a force of nature hell-bent on closing the distance. We slipped into the side street, but it was barely wide enough for us to run side by side. The sounds of chaos faded slightly. The howl, now a dull roar, kept us moving. I could feel each step weigh heavier, anxiety clawing at my insides. Just when I thought we had gained a moment of safety, I watched in horror as the beast barreled out of the cafe, its eyes fixated on us. "Is there nowhere to hide?" Sarah's voice trembled as we turned down the alley, desperation to keep our feet moving. Ahead, a succession of metal dumpsters and crates formed a makeshift blockade. "We can climb," I urged, feeling the adrenaline firing through me again. "Climb?" she echoed, doubt clear in her voice. "Trust me." I hoisted myself onto the first dumpster, pulling her up beside me. The creature's growls intensified, its breath echoing through the alley. I could see it arriving at the entrance, muscles tensing, ready to pounce. "Quick, over," I urged, motioning toward the tall stack of crates. Together we leapt from dumpster to crate, praying it would buy us a moment. Just as we scrambled to the top, I glanced down, heart pounding, and caught the flash of the creature moving with uncanny speed. "Don't look down," I ordered as we climbed higher, but the fear of falling only pushed us to go faster. As we reached the highest point, I heard a crash, and then silence. "What happened?" Sarah breathed, peering cautiously over the edge. That's when I saw it. The creature had stopped, its gaze fixated on something in the shadows of the alley beyond. Something else was lurking there, an even larger silhouette, darker than the night. I turned to Sarah, dread pooling in my stomach. I think it brought something with it. The darkness shifted and my heart raced. I didn't want to believe it, but my instincts screamed that we were no longer alone. The second creature, larger and more menacing, stepped forward into a thin beam of light from a flickering street lamp. Its eyes glowed crimson, sharper, and more determined. "What is that?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely a breath, a feathery sound against the growing weight of fear that hung in the air. "I don't know," I admitted, panic lacing my tone. I was grasping for answers I didn't have. My eyes darted between the two beasts. They seemed to size each other up, caught in a moment of tense stillness. The first creature, the one that chased us from the cafe, growled again, a low rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate the crates under our feet. The second creature mirrored the sound, the two of them creating an unsettling symphony of threat. I felt like prey caught between two predators. "Should we jump?" Sarah asked, her eyes wide. I could see the gears in her mind turning. She always was the practical one, even in impossible situations. I shook my head. If we jump down, we're trapped. There's nowhere to run. I needed a plan, but my mind felt blank. I had no choice but to trust my instincts. The larger creature took a step forward, muscles rippling under its dark fur. I barely stifled a gasp. This one was not just bigger, it was different. A menacing intelligence rolled off it in waves. I could see scars running across its body, marks of battles fought and won. "Stay still," I instructed Sarah. I hoped both creatures would remain oblivious to our presence, but with each pounding heartbeat, I feared I might be wrong. A loud crash echoed behind me. I turned my head just in time to see the remnants of the cafe's sign collapse onto the street, sending a shower of splintered wood and glass. It felt like the whole world had turned against us. I turned back to face Sarah. Her face was pale, eyes wide with terror. The first creature reacted instantly. It locked its gaze on us and suddenly, its focus shifted. With a fierce snarl, it lunged toward the shadow, bounding off the crates with 2 magnificent leaps, leaving us gasping in disbelief. "Run!" I shouted, but a part of me was glued to the spot, entranced. Whatever instinct drove the creatures had taken precedence over our plight. In that moment, I wondered if we were safe or if we were merely waiting for the inevitable. The alley erupted in a blur. They clashed, the sounds of growls and visceral strikes colliding with the hard surface of the street, followed by the shrills of metal and flesh. "Go!" Sarah screamed, snapping me from my trance. The whirling chaos around us served as both a distraction and an invitation, our chance for escape. "Now," I urged, and we scrambled down the far side of the crates. I felt a surge of hope as we dashed into the next alley, but that hope flickered precariously. As we turned the corner, I heard a bone-chilling roar that echoed off the walls. Whatever had happened back there felt monumental. It felt like we had just witnessed something primal, something we could never unsee. I suddenly wished for more than just a way to escape. I wanted answers. I paused, catching my breath. What do we do now? Then, as if the universe wanted to answer, the ground beneath us vibrated, sending us both stumbling. "Look!" I shouted, pointing ahead where a narrow door stood ajar, light spilling into the dark alley. We sprinted toward it, the fading roars behind us reminding me we were still not out of danger. "It's our only chance," I yelled, and just as we reached for the handle, something cold and wet brushed against my ankle. Fear clawed at me again as I glanced back to find the smaller creature emerging from the shadows. It was closer than ever. My heartbeat quickened with disbelief. "Get inside!" I yelled, and Sarah pushed open the door, grabbing my arm and pulling me through just as I felt the beast's breath against my neck. As the door swung closed, the fear and uncertainty loomed larger than ever. We were safe, at least for the moment, but what we had just escaped from might have only been the beginning. The door creaked shut behind us, and a moment of silence enveloped us. My breathing echoed in the cramped space, mingling with Sarah's shallow gasps. I leaned against the wall, pressing my palms to my face, attempting to calm the chaos swirling in my mind. "Where are we?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking slightly. I scanned the dimly lit room. It was cluttered with old equipment and strange artifacts lying haphazardly on a dusty workbench. A bare bulb flickered above, illuminating the peeling walls that were covered with strange symbols and markings I couldn't comprehend. "I don't know," I replied, still trying to catch my breath. Something about this place felt different. It wasn't just the fear from before, but an unsettling sense of familiarity, like a tug in the back of my mind that I couldn't quite place. We crept further inside, listening intently for any sounds of danger outside. The growls and roars had faded, but they left a hollow echo in my chest. I had to know what was happening. "We've got to find a way out of here," I said, "but we need to figure out where we are first." Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the corner of the room. Sarah tensed beside me as an old man emerged from the shadows. He had wild, unkempt hair and wore a stained lab coat lined with pockets full of odd gadgets. His eyes sparkled with an intense curiosity as he assessed us. "Ah, so you finally arrived," he exclaimed, his voice a mix of excitement and disbelief. "I wondered when the creatures would find someone intelligent enough to unravel the mystery." "What are you talking about?" I asked, a mix of confusion and annoyance bubbling within me. "We just ran for our lives. We're not part of any mystery." He waved his hands dismissively. "You don't understand. The creatures you encountered are not mere animals. They are guardians, protectors of something much larger, something you've unwittingly become part of." My heart raced, a new wave of confusion washing over me. "What do you mean? We're not part of anything." The man chuckled, but it was devoid of humor. "Oh, but you are. The moment you set foot in that cafe, your fate intertwined with the events beyond your comprehension. This city has secrets. Power flows through its veins, and you've tapped into it." I felt my stomach drop. "What power? What secrets? You're not making any sense." "Maybe you need to see for yourself," he replied, stepping over to a large console filled with flickering screens. He pressed a button, and a holographic display flickered to life, showing a map of the city, overlaid with glowing paths. These are ley lines. They connect places of energy and power, and they're teeming with life. Those creatures you saw are a part of it. As I stared at the map, something clicked. I remembered the labs at CERN, experimenting with energy, trying to understand the fabric of reality. Had we crossed into something we weren't meant to? "And what does this have to do with us?" I rasped. He turned to me, his expression serious. "If we don't discover the source of this disturbance, and quickly, everything will unravel. The creatures will breach the boundaries. They'll come for more than just you." My pulse quickened again. "And what do you know about them?" Before he could reply, the lights above flickered violently. Alarms blared, cutting through the tension like a knife. "They've found us," he shouted, urgency lacing his words. "We have to move now." Panic surged as he hurried to a door at the far end of the room. I grabbed Sarah's arm. "What do we do?" "That way," she urged, pointing. "We can't go back out. We need to find a way to get ahead of them." I hesitated, then nodded. "Let's go." As we followed the man, a heavy thumping echoed from the direction we had come. It felt like the creatures were right on our heels, and it hit me, a new uncertainty. We had escaped one danger, only to dive deeper into another. Then I saw it, a shimmering doorway at the end of the hall. It pulsed with elusive energy. "That's it," the man shouted, reaching for the doorknob. "If we can get through, we might have a chance." As the door swung open, the sound of something monstrous crashing behind us drowned out everything. I took a step forward, but my instinct screamed that this was far from over. Whatever happened next could change everything. As the door swung open, I caught a glimpse of a world that seemed both wild and unsettling. A vibrant space filled with swirling light and strange geometric shapes that defied logic. But there was no time to ponder the absurdity of it. The crashing noise from behind us intensified, shaking the very ground beneath our feet. "Quick, get in," the old man urged, his voice sharp and commanding. I pushed Sarah forward and we stumbled into the glowing portal. The moment we crossed the threshold, the air vibrated with energy, almost alive around us. We landed on a cold, metallic floor. The shimmering doorway vanished behind us, leaving only darkness in its wake. I turned around, my heart racing. "What just happened?" "Welcome to the Nexus," the man said, breathless but exhilarated. He was already studying a console on the far wall, pushing buttons and flicking switches. "This is the center of the ley lines. We can manipulate energy here, but we have to hurry." "Hurry? Hurry where?" Sarah asked, glancing at me, panic creeping into her voice. I could feel it too, a sense of dread gnawing at my insides. He didn't look up. "We'll need to create a shield. If those creatures follow us, they'll tear through this space like paper." "Wait," I interrupted, trying to keep my panicked mind focused. "You said those creatures are guardians. What do they want with us exactly?" "Explaining it now may take too long." He glanced back, urgency flashing in his eyes. "But the disturbance you triggered has drawn them here like moths to a flame. That's why they sought you. You've got to trust me." Before I could respond, the alarms blared again. Red lights flashed as images of the creatures appeared on the screens around us, their snarling faces filled with fury. They were close. It felt like a chill went down my spine. "Start the sequence," the old man shouted. "It's our only chance." Sarah and I exchanged fearful glances, but I nodded. We rushed to the console, trying to understand the chaotic mess of buttons and screens. My fingers hovered over a red button marked EMP field. "What if this is a mistake?" "Do it," he urged, his voice breaking with urgency. I pressed the button, and the room erupted in a blinding light. A wave of energy pulsated outwards, enveloping us. The screens flickered, showing the creatures recoiling, but it wasn't enough to stop them completely. Their growls echoed in the distance, sharp and angry. "What next?" I shouted over the noise. "We need to amplify it," the man instructed. "Over there. Find the power conduits." I turned to see a series of tubes shimmering with energy along the wall. "Can you hold them off?" I yelled. "I can try." He stepped forward, preparing to defend us. As I scrambled toward the conduits, a deep growl vibrated the air around us, sending an icy grip of fear through my chest. That fear morphed into desperation. I had to act fast. I reached out, fingers trembling as I connected wires that glowed with power. "Come on. Come on," I muttered to myself, the roar growing louder. Then everything went dark. The screens blinked out, and silence enveloped the room. My heart raced as I fumbled for the console. Had we failed? "Keep going," the old man yelled, his voice breaking through the tension. Then I heard it, a low, menacing snarl resonating from the other side of the room. Someone was in the house. I froze. The air thickened around me, and it felt like time had stopped. I turned my head slowly toward the source of the sound, my heart racing. The shadows in the corner of the room shifted, forming something darker, something alive. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely a breath. I nodded, but it felt like stone in my throat. The old man was still focused on the console, desperately tapping at the buttons, oblivious to the looming threat. "Just a little more," he muttered, his eyes darting between the screens. I wished I could share his confidence, but dread twisted in my stomach. The growl echoed again, closer this time. I risked a glance over my shoulder. A pair of glowing eyes emerged from the darkness, reflecting the neon lights of the room. They seemed to pierce through the chaos. I felt trapped between these two worlds, one of light and power, the other of unfathomable darkness. "We need to," I started, but the words caught in my throat as the creature stepped forward. It was massive, covered in sinewy muscles and jagged scars. Its fanged mouth curled into a snarl, revealing a set of teeth that looked capable of shredding metal. "Run!" The old man's voice broke through my stunned state. He was still trying to manipulate the console, but I could see the strain on his face. Sarah grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the back of the room. I stumbled, unable to tear my gaze away from the creature. "What do we do?" I shouted. "Trust me," he yelled back, pressing another button. It felt like the walls were closing in as the monster lunged. Suddenly, the entire place lit up with a blinding flash and the console erupted with sparks. The creature hesitated, confused by the sudden brightness. That hesitation was our chance. "Get to the far wall," I yelled to Sarah, and we sprinted across the room, dodging the havoc the old man was causing as he frantically tried to stabilize the energy. I felt the tremors beneath my feet, the very floor shaking as the creature gathered itself to pounce. My thoughts raced. If we didn't find a way to get that shield up, we were as good as dead. "Almost there," the old man shouted, sweat glistening on his forehead. "Just a few more seconds." A roar that rattled my bones erupted from the creature. The sound consumed the room as it bounded toward us, fury etched into every muscular movement. I held my breath, gripping Sarah's hand tightly. Then I saw it, a panel under a strange glowing arc. "The shield. Can you activate it?" I yelled. "Give me a second. I can only hold this position for so long." He was losing strength, frustration creepingly evident as the lights flickered around us. Another snarl marked its approach. We were out of time. I dove for the panel, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. As my fingers pressed against the unyielding surface, I found something. A switch. I didn't hesitate. I pulled it down hard. The air crackled, and a shimmering barrier flickered to life just as the creature leaped. The impact shook the room. I saw sparks fly as it slammed against the shield, a cacophony of growls mixed with the hum of energy. It snarled and clawed at the invisible wall between us. "Did we do it?" I breathed, but my eyes were glued to the creature's furious display. "That should hold it for now," the old man said. But I could hear uncertainty in his voice. I turned to him, desperate. "What now?" "Now we need to stabilize the nexus," he replied, urgency replaced by a hint of fear. But before I could ask more, the lights flickered again, a shadow crossing the barrier. I felt a chill. This wasn't over. Then came the unmistakable sound of another growl from somewhere deeper in the darkness. There's a feeling one gets when time slows down, when the shadows stretch out in anticipation of something dreadful. I could feel it now, an unshakable sense of dread wrapping around my throat. The creature outside the shield bucked wildly, But what caught my attention was the sound. Another low, throaty growl, echoing from the darkness behind the first. "Why are there two?" I whispered, my voice barely carrying over the angry snorts of the beast slamming against the barrier. "There shouldn't be," the old man exclaimed, his hands flying over various buttons, but I could see the tremor in his fingers. "Not like this. Not at this moment. If something has crossed over, it means that the rift is unstable. We're in serious trouble." I turned to Sarah, both of us panting heavily, our eyes wide. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. "Stay focused," the old man instructed. "We need to plug into the ley line system to stabilize the nexus and stop those creatures from leaking through." "Stabilize?" I echoed, my mind racing to comprehend. "What if we fail? What happens?" His gaze met mine, a flash of fear evident. "If we fail, then more than just these two creatures will break through. We're talking about a potential invasion. These guardians might tear apart our reality." The creature still rattled against the shield, its eyes burning with a feral intensity. It let out another feral roar, and I instinctively recoiled. I didn't want to think of the repercussions. I forced myself to focus on what I needed to do. "Where do I plug in?" I demanded. "Over there." He gestured toward a tangled mess of wires snaking out from the console's heart into the shimmering walls of the room. I seized the moment, moving quickly to where he indicated. Just as I reached for the cables, the first creature collided with the shield again, sending a tremor through the air. The lights flickered ominously, and for just a moment, I felt the energy waver. A signal of instability. A reminder that our protection wasn't eternal. "Now," he shouted, urgency infusing his tone. "Connect those." I grabbed the nearest wires, my fingers fumbling with the connections, and a jolt of energy zapped through my body as soon as I made contact. The screens crackled with new power, displaying streams of complex energy flows. The creature roared again, even more furious, but I pushed past the fear, the adrenaline coursing through my veins powering my movements. "Keep going," the old man urged, his voice frantic now. "We need more connection. There's no time." "What about Sarah?" I glanced back, realizing she was still near the shield, eyes wide in fear as she watched the creature's futile attempts to breach our defenses. "I'll cover her," he shouted, rushing to stand between her and the creature. "Just focus. You can do this." I darted back to the console, searching for what pieces were left to connect. Streams of energy pulsed before me. I didn't understand it, but instinct took over. With every wire I attached, I could sense the room vibrating, the air thickening with potential. The creature bellowed, a raw primal threat that echoed chillingly through the cavernous space. "Almost there." I was starting to lose hope, each heartbeat feeling like an eternity as I frantically pressed the wires into place. Then, there. I secured a final connection. The energy surged, flooding the room with a brilliant glow. Just as I stepped back, the barrier surrounding us flared brilliantly, a golden shield blooming as it absorbed the chaotic energy. "No!" the creature snarled, sensing the shift. Aggressive fury surged through its movements as it thrashed against the barrier again, but this time I could see a tremor of instability ripple through its form, as though it were unable to comprehend the newfound force surrounding us. The old man grinned in disbelief, a sense of elation flashing across his features. "Now, we need to push this back." He scrambled over to the console, fingers dancing over glowing icons, generating a wave of energy to amplify the shield and seal the rift for good. But then came another growl, different, yet equally menacing. My heart sank as I glimpsed the second creature looming behind the shadows, its crimson eyes raked over the room with hungry intent. "No!" the old man said. "It's not working! It's tearing through!" Time warped into a slow-motion nightmare as the two creatures pressed closer, pressing against the shield as if they sensed the weakening in its defense. The air was electric with danger. "Jamie!" Sarah's voice broke through, sharp and urgent, pulling my attention toward her once again. She was holding something. "Look!" She held a small orb, glowing with an ethereal light. "I found this. Do you think it could help?" "I don't know," I shouted, but her determination illuminated the dark corners of my mind. "Just give it to me." Sarah tossed it over, and as I caught the orb, a field of energy pulsed from it, wrapping around my hands. I could feel the remnants of power coursing through me, connecting me to everything. The ley lines tangled in the fabric of this reality. "They're amplifying," the old man shouted, realizing with dawning awe what we could do. "Focus the energy," I commanded, feeling the bond growing stronger, anchoring us as I raised the orb toward the creatures. In that moment, I knew we were no longer powerless victims. We were a conduit to the ley lines, channeling energies older than humanity itself. The orb vibrated loudly in my hands as it joined forces with the barrier, sending out brilliant waves of light that ricocheted off the walls like a shockwave. The creatures recoiled, snarling and thrashing against the barrier as the two opposing energies clashed. "What did we just— Oh no." The old man, but his voice faded as the orb pulsed violently, blinding light erupting all around us. Through the chaos, I caught a glimpse of the first monster's feral fury giving way to confusion, its once enraged posture shifting to something almost defeated. I realized this was working. It had to. But still, the second creature loomed larger, its eyes narrowing with malevolent intent, darting back and forth searching for a weakness. "More!" I shouted, mustering everything, my thoughts merging with the power around me. I focused on pushing every ounce of energy through the orb, watching as the monsters struggled, their forms flickering like shadows caught in light. "Now," the old man urged, furiously tapping at the console. I could sense the ripples of energy shifting, forming new barriers. With desperation, I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling the raw power flow through me. I couldn't just fight them. We had to guide them back, to lift the veil, to seal our worlds apart once more. In those desperate moments, I caught flashes of what could be, a world untainted by the darkness of creatures seeking passage, a reality that could be restored. A pulse raced through me, igniting determination. "Let go of the darkness," I whispered, pushing my will, feeling the energy crackling around us surge forward. Suddenly, a blinding flash illuminated the room as the energy peaked, enveloping us in a cocoon of luminescence. The shadows screamed, lost to the brilliance, and in that moment, the world shifted. With a final thrumming pulse, everything exploded in a kaleidoscope of colors and sound. My thoughts scattered, enveloped in that burst of energy, as I felt the grip of reality bending around me. And then it was gone. Reality settled back into an unsettling silence, the room now bare and still. I opened my eyes to find myself sprawled among dusty equipment, Sarah at my side, and the old man slumped back against the console, breathing heavily, a mix of relief and disbelief painted across his face. "What happened?" Sarah asked, glancing around at the anachronistic surroundings. I think we did it," I stammered, still in shock. "We pushed them back." But as the silence wrapped around us, I couldn't shake the feeling that even though we had silenced the immediate threat, the questions lingered in the dark corners of my mind. "Will they come back?" I found myself asking, and uncertainty still hung in the air, a question without resolution, a lurking shadow of what could always return. The old man glanced at me, and I caught something flickering behind his wise eyes. "That's the nature of the unknown," he said, a hint of admiration lacing his words. "Some things remain unanswered. It's what we learn from it that matters." And just like that, my world shifted again. Maybe I wouldn't find all the answers. Maybe the rift was sealed, at least for now. But something made me think it wouldn't be the last time I'd be connected to the threads of darkness, hovering just beyond the edges of my reality. I moved back toward Sarah, but a part of me would always wonder, always listen to the whispers in the dark, waiting for something familiar to break through again. As we stepped through the door to return, uncertainty shifted like a shadow beneath my skin, lingering uncertainly in the spaces between light and dark. Outside the old lab, life resumed unchanged, blissfully unaware of the rift we had carved. Yet as I walked away, the chill of dread remained, and a question echoed in my mind. If we'd pushed them back for now, what of tomorrow? What if they were still watching, still waiting for another chance to cross over? I didn't know. I wasn't sure I wanted to. But as Milo rubbed against my leg, anxiously mewing, I felt something surge through me, an urge to keep looking. Perhaps there were answers to find in the blurred lines, and perhaps the shadows weren't finished with me yet. But as I stepped into the sunlight, I promised myself I would be ready.